I'm Algenon Cash, and you're locked in. We have been seeing some record tax revaluations all around the state of North Carolina. I've received so many notes and messages from my audience asking about what is going on with the real estate market. I recently wrote an op-ed talking about some of the revaluations that we're seeing in North Carolina. In certain counties, like in my backyard here in Forsyth County, some property tax valuations have jumped by 50%. And over in Wake County, they're also seeing the same. So today we're going to have a conversation that actually affects every North Carolinian, the real estate market. Whether you're a homeowner, an investor, a renter, or simply keeping an eye on your neighborhood, market valuations, vacancy rates, tax assessments, and comps play a big role in shaping your financial picture. Today, joining me on the show is Robert Mann, who's a certified appraiser and the CEO of Triangle Appraisal Group. With years of experience assessing residential and commercial properties across North Carolina, Robert brings a unique perspective on where our market stands today. And I believe you like to go by Bob. So, Bob, thank you for locking in with me. Thank you for
That's
being
fine.
here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Algenon. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So glad to have you lock in for your first time. And I guess, Bob, just to get started from an audience that may be unaware of who you are or even
Mhm.
unaware of Triangle Appraisal Group, talk a little bit about who you are and sort of introduce yourself.
Okay, well, my name's Bob Mann. I'm with Triangle Appraisal Group. I'm originally from New York. My father was an appraiser. I've been down here about 15 years. We have uh, we cover a large area. We're in the Triangle, Triad, Charlotte, Pinehurst, Fayetteville. We're in Wilmington and Myrtle Beach. You know, we're pretty active in the area, and we do things a little differently. We have a team out in the field, and we have a team in the office. So we try, we kind of work on our turnaround time and everything, customer service and everything like that. That's our focus.
And
And
it's sort of a family affair. I believe it was your daughter,
yeah,
Rachel, who actually was reading the Carolina Journal, came across an article I wrote about what was going on with property tax valuations here in North Carolina. She reached out, got us together. So, do you have any more kids that are part of the company?
yes, I do. My youngest daughter, she's kind of the social media. She does like a lot of the TikTok and I never touched TikTok before. And Instagram stuff. And, it's kind of fun because I get to work with them. And they're kind of opening up avenues that I probably wouldn't have really thought of. Or I've thought of, but I was like, I can't do that.
No, I think that's great. Anytime you can bring your family in and not only do what you love and are passionate about in terms of making money, but to be able to do it with your family, that
Yeah,
sort of takes it to a new level.
yeah, it is a bonus.
Now, I think you were telling me offline your father was an appraiser in New York, correct?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Now, did you get a chance to work with him as well in the
Oh
business
yeah,
before
he
you?
he trained me and everything, and we worked together, and that was a whole different element. Because that was in '95. The technology has come so far. I was dropping off film at that 1 hour photo on the way home to develop it, go back, pick it up, drawing a sketch by hand, all this stuff. It was so different. I tell him about how we do things. He's still alive today. I talk to him all the time. I tell him how we do things now. He's like, he's amazed. And
Yeah.
when I got involved, he was at the stage where technology, I'll just wait it out. I'm good. I'll do this until I can't do it anymore, kind of thing. So it's kind of a push and shove type of stuff, but he did what he had to do.
Well, I think that's impressive. So congratulations on the growth that you've been able to experience since 1995, and I'm
Thank
certain the next generation coming in, like Rachel and your other daughter, will take it even farther. They'll take it to new heights. But I guess to just get started, Bob, let's start off with sort of a broad view. How would you, based on what you're seeing through your offices and some of the work you all do out in the field, how would you describe the real estate market in North Carolina right now?
some things are staying on the market longer, right? Uh, but priced well, they do sell. I mean, even the higher end, and the higher end markets is almost becoming a different animal. I mean, I don't know, if people are relocating and they have a lot of money from a sale in another area or what, but uh, I look at some of the prices and then I look at the mortgage payment involved with that price, and I'm like, you gotta, that's more than I spend in a month. I mean, it's crazy. So uh, I think they have a lot of equity involved already, and they're able to sell their home. I think the real challenge though is with first time home buyers. I mean, I have kids that are looking to buy a house and stuff, and I see it. It's I think it is a challenge, and uh, you would want them to maybe come out, have more options for financing, because that's really the basis of the market, right? That's the kind of how it goes. First time home buyer, then they're trading up after that, and they build some equity, maybe move like 2 or 3 times. So, you know, I think that's kind of a stumbling block, the first time home buyer, and we're right in the beginning of the selling season, buying and selling season. Once March comes around, things start moving. And so far, I haven't. And I guess everybody's rate sensitive, but so far it's been pretty active. You know, so again, I'm not sure what people come up with the money for this stuff, but it is still moving. I think it's like a little better than last year for us, from our standpoint.
Well, appraisers typically are a strong early indicator of what's going on with the real estate market. I mean, if you all are keeping busy, then that means
Yeah.
there's some transactions and activity happening within the market. So I guess you're saying, despite the increase in sort of the median price that a home is selling for, and despite the increase in mortgage rates, you still see strong activity.
Yeah, and as far as me, like the price from this year to last year, I don't think it's too much different, but it's still high levels, right?
What
So
would you say right now? I mean, if you're out, you're a new home buyer. I mean, what kind of price would you be looking at? Like 250,000 or more than that?
well, here's the challenge. I mean, all right, 250, you know, pre-COVID was a starter home in a lot of areas. Like I remember when I originally moved here, I thought, you know, it would be cool that if my kids, when they grow up, start a family, they could live close by, and now like they're like, we can't afford to live close by to like where you live. And I live in Cary, so and that's so you really and there is a lot of land and a lot of development, but it's further out, like from Raleigh. Like now, I don't know if you noticed, but the triangle seems to be expanding. Like they consider part of Sanford part of the triangle, so and everything with the new like 540, and things are within an hour of Raleigh or RTP. So that comes into play, but 250 I think is reasonable as far as your mortgage payment and everything, but I don't think you get much for 250. That's the thing. Or you got to be very handy or something like that. But and it also depends on what area you live in. Like that, so there's
Yeah, the geographic area has a lot to do with. I know my daughter, she lives right now in Greenville, and she just graduated ECU,
yeah.
and thinking about taking a job in Raleigh at some point. I think she's going to be in Greenville through the rest of this year. But she's talking about taking a job in Raleigh, but living in Wilson, which is about an hour away, I guess, or maybe slightly over. And you hear more and more from people in that triangle area, living further and further out from Raleigh, but maybe they're working in Raleigh. That seems to be a
Oh,
growing trend.
that's exactly. My daughter's in Nightdale right now, and they were considering Wilson. And we went. I like Wilson. It's got a kind of cool urban area, like
Yeah.
a couple of breweries and stuff. And you talk to people there; they've been there a long time. and I thought it was pretty neat. And that's what my daughter was saying. I wouldn't mind uh, living here. I was like, okay. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah.
But it didn't come together. So
No, I love Wilson. One of my first jobs was selling insurance door to door, and Wilson and Rocky Mount was a territory that I used to cover. Some really great people that live out in that part of
yeah,
North Carolina, so I enjoyed that area. I guess to shift our conversation to actual property valuations, which we're talking about now, if you look over the last 12 to 18 months, Bob, I mean, what would you say are some of the bigger shifts that you've seen when you're out in the field?
uh, well, I think things. You know, some homeowners are a little stubborn. I think, like they think of, well, in 2023, I could have gotten this for my house, and maybe that's not the case now, but they're still stuck in that mindset. And so houses like that could linger on the market longer. And when that happens, sometimes like they'll call it like the listing's getting a little stale, like what's wrong with that house? It's not selling, type of thing. But and then like we also do a lot of private work for like owners and realtors. Sometimes is when they are stuck in that the realtor saying no, you got to list it here, and the owner saying, well, I want to list it here, and then they're far away. Um, Sometimes bringing in a third party will make that a little bit more realistic value. But I see that, and the inventory is in certain areas is a little tight, like a real desirable, like some subdivisions or some. If for whatever reason it's desirable, inventory can be really tight, and it things still when it's in the right area or the right price still will sell above market, which is kind of you know kind of strange, but it happens. And I think the one thing we're blessed with is we're in a good area, in North Carolina, and I would say like the new builds for a while there, like that was your best buy because like at the end of the year, things happened so much this year, but at the end of last year, they had a lot of inventory. So they wanted to get out of that by the end of the year or the beginning of the following year of 2024. And you could get a good deal with that. And they might have tapped the brakes, maybe new builds tapped the brakes a little bit. And so that I thought that was the best deal for a while. But as far as and a lot of it's pocket, it's in pockets. You'll see a trend or something. It's like it's hard to say for like the whole state. And Charlotte, anything inside, Charlotte or Raleigh inside the belt line is, people just go crazy for that stuff. You know,
Yeah, you cover a lot of different geographic areas. I heard you mention certain areas in North Carolina, but then you also mentioned some areas down in South Carolina. Out of all the various submarkets that you're covering, which ones are you seeing are the hottest? And then are there any that you see are sort of cooled off?
um, well, I think Sanford's like a lot of new builders are going down there. And can you hear me?
Yeah.
You hear me? I think Sanford, like a lot of new builders are down there, and it's still relatively close to the Triangle. Well, it is a triangle, but relatively close to Raleigh or RTP. And you can get a lot of money, more for your money there, land and stuff. And as far as I mean, things that were desirable 2, 3 years ago are still desirable today. I don't really see anything cooling off. You know
Hmm.
that I mean, no, unless you can bring something to my attention. I mean, yeah, I really don't see anything cooling off.
No, that well, I mean, I guess that can be a good thing. Maybe not a great thing for someone who's trying to get into the market, but certainly if you're already in the market, it's good.
The other thing, like with the first time home buyer, I mean, they have the real obstacle, and it kind of stinks that. And I could see actually places like Greenville, where North Carolina. My daughter also went to ECU, and um, it's come a long way since she graduated. And I think it's a. I would retire out there. I mean, it's they have everything you need, and it's not that far. It's close to the beach. Um, and supposedly, I think there's a couple of factories coming close to that area that they would want to. They're going to need housing, right? I saw one small tract builder bought some land out there. I can't think of their name offhand, but I saw that. And I haven't seen that in a while.
Yeah, I mean, even over the short period of time my daughter was there, the 4 years or so, 3.5 years, I saw, quite a bit of changes in Greenville just from the
Yeah,
time she arrived a few years ago to, the last time I visited her. You mentioned track builders. I mean, what are you seeing right now from some of the large home builders? Have they slowed down because of higher interest rates? And I know construction costs seem to go higher.
yeah,
We're
it's
thinking
slowed
lumber's
down.
going to be higher. I mean,
Yeah, I think it slowed down a little. You know, like we try to internally, we do track that a little bit. Like we're always trying to get new builders work. Trying to like get on with DR Horton, Toll Brothers, all those. And I don't know, they seem to do a good job with the pricing and everything. And maybe they aren't building as a spec, but they're saying have a model open, go to contract on that house, and then we'll build that house. Maybe that's happening more.
mm.
Just building and somebody's going to buy it. Something like that.
So some of the speculative construction has
Yeah,
decreased, but they're obviously
yeah.
still.
And I would say that's even more on the smaller builders. You know, Definitely doing that. Like
Yeah,
they don't
yeah,
want
the ones that can't quite carry a house and just wait for
to.
somebody to come buy it. I know one trend that I'm seeing amongst a lot of the land developers. I know that when we had the Great Recession going back to 2009, so many builders and developers cut back from developing land, and that's why we got caught with a shortage in actual lots available when we came out of the recession. And it feels like this time around, even though we might be going through a little bit of a slowdown, it seems like the development of land is continuing because nobody wants to get back into that position of not having actual
Right.
lots in inventory. So that may make a difference as we continue to grow as a state over the next 10 years or so. But one of the things that really has sort of gotten people up in arms here lately, obviously, as you have a very hot real estate market like we've had here in North Carolina for the last several years, all the frantic buying and all the transactions have pushed up values. And now all of a sudden, people are waking up to some tax bills to reflect that increase in value. And many people are unprepared. They were just unprepared for the higher valuations. What's your comments to some people like in Wake County and Forsyth County that's all of a sudden seeing their property tax value jump 50%?
I mean, yeah, right. The good thing is probably the biggest asset you own went up in value. Bad thing is, your monthly bill is going to be more, right? And I don't know. Well, I think, and there's a lot of, I think it affects basically the fixed income people more. Like if you're retired or something and you're on fixed income, all right. So now you got to come up with another $125 a month. Where is that going to come from, right? But many times, just because your valuation went up, doubled in value, doesn't mean your tax bill is going to double in value, right? That's not dollar for dollar. They use what's called a millage rate, and they'll usually start. and they'll adjust that millage rate over, like, say we get reassessed every 5 to 7 years, somehow 4 to 7 years. They'll adjust that millage rate to gradually increase your taxes over that time, over that 4 to 7 years. So I mean, like with me, like, I think my taxes went up $100 a month. Yeah, that stinks, but I I probably somebody in my family or myself spend $100 on something that I don't need to do over the month. But I understand. I want to be insensitive to people who are really, like somebody on fixed income, retired or something. I mean, I could see that being an issue. And I think over 65, there are programs that in the counties for just that, you know. But you want more money from me? Yeah, there's going to be people are going to complain, I mean, and it's going to hurt some people, you know. I don't know
Yeah.
about getting priced out of your house, but I guess that could happen over time.
Yeah, in the article I wrote for Carolina Journal and for my audience, if you do not subscribe to the Carolina Journal, make sure you go subscribe to the Carolina Journal. About once a week, I have an article or an op-ed appear in the Carolina Journal on a variety of topics, where it's about real estate, the economy, politics, some of the things that's happening at an international level with tariffs. You can read my commentary in the Carolina Journal. But Bob, when in the article I wrote, I talked about the city of Austin and something they put in place where they actually put a cap on the amount that counties can increase property valuations year to year. I mean, do
Yeah.
you think we need to be looking at something like that here in North Carolina? I mean, a 50% increase in valuation basically overnight, that could be seen as excessive.
Well, is it 2% increase in the tax in the taxes, or 2% increase in the tax value? Because the that's that people what people care about, right? Is, I mean, in my opinion, you're more in tune with that than me, but in my opinion, is, well, how's it going to affect my monthly expenses?
Yeah.
And like I said, with that millage rate, I think that they play with it. All right, $100 is $100. But I don't think that's like 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 over a year. So it does hurt. But the 2% increase, I guess you could do it. I'm just curious, and I did hear of it in other states, but I would just be curious what the ins and outs of that was. I mean, it sounds great, but are we saying the tax value, houses did go up 50%? I
Yeah.
mean, if you went to sell your house, you would probably get, close to 50% more than you could have 7 years ago.
Yeah, I think the measure in Austin, Texas, from what I read and studied, I think what they are attempting to do is, obviously, if all of a sudden you have these huge increases on everybody's property taxes, that's sort of like windfall profits to these county and municipal governments. They didn't necessarily have an increase in demand for services, but all of a
Yeah,
sudden now they've got this fresh revenue in to do all these things that weren't on the agenda. So I can see the perspective of what they did in Texas, because it's like, okay, yeah, property tax, the valuation probably went up because the market value went up, but that doesn't necessarily there needs to be means there needs to be a windfall of profits inside of these county and local governments for them to go off and do whatever they want to do with it.
I see your point. Not your point's much more clear on that. Yeah, are you giving me 50% more amenities now? We have more new parks and stuff like that. I get it. But I think that's a valid point. It's not an open check, open ATM machine. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, because I know here in Guilford County, which you might not cover the Tri. I know you live in the Triangle, so you may not keep up with Triad news as closely as I do. But here in Guilford County, they tried to pass a bond referendum that the citizens actually voted down. And now all of a sudden, the county commissioners are happy because, they didn't need the bond referendum to pass. They've got a windfall of profits coming in from property taxes. And
Mhm.
instead of them actually doing something to put that money back in the hands of their citizens, they're excited to be able to use it for all the ideas and the pet projects they had that voters actually voted down.
Uh,
So that you get into this sort of a conundrum here when all of a
yeah.
sudden these public elected officials get all this money in their hands. I even heard about some scenarios recently where the tax value is higher than the market value. How is that possible?
Well, I've heard of that as well. I haven't seen it. That might be a case by case basis. I mean, I'm going to give you a couple examples that happened to me. Like when I got my tax bill last year, I was like, they had a protocol how to fight your taxes. So I was going and it was an informal appeal and a formal appeal. And I go, let me start with the informal appeal. I just printed out stuff that sold in my, there was low inventory in my neighborhood, so I had to go to competing neighborhoods, right? And significantly less, not significant, but 10, 15% less than what they were telling my house was worth, right? And I submitted it, and they came back to me and said, our valuation stands. If you want to go through a formal appeal, go ahead. In the meantime, my neighbor put their house up for sale, and it sold in one weekend over list, and I was like, what am I? I'm not. What am I doing? you know, um, I haven't seen that with the. I will tell you what you have to look out for. For if you're why your tax valuation might be higher. A lot of times, if you have a house, like say it's a you know big vaulted ceilings or something, and it's two story, an open area, like your living room's open or something from the first floor to the second floor. A lot of times, the county isn't coming around and measuring your house from the interior, from the inside. They're just looking at the house. They consider that space. They'll do your space on the first floor, and then just double it without knowing what's going on inside.
Hmm.
So I have to pay attention to the public records that they're basing their value on, make sure they're correct. And obviously, if it's in your favor, you don't really want to report it, but go ahead if you want to. But I could see that happening a lot, where they have like some people don't have a second floor finished, or it's just half the second floor is finished, or the tax records show the attic finished, and it's not. So that could add a lot to your because they just do a formula and they aren't inside the house.
Yeah, that's really good intelligence. I actually didn't realize that it's almost like a drive-by appraisal. I guess they don't
Yeah.
necessarily come in
Well,
and
they
know
just get
exactly what's going on, but
yeah,
uh,
they just get all the data together.
yeah.
So
So here's my last question before I let you go, Bob. For someone who all of a sudden just saw one of these high property tax bills come in, I mean, should they go through the appeal process? I mean, is it worth the energy and the time, or
well,
should they just accept it as is?
well, well, I'll tell you from our perspective, we get a lot of phone calls on this because we advertise to help the homeowner, right? And we get a lot of phone calls about it. Many times they'll call in or they'll send it into an email, their information. We'll look at it, and if we can help them, we'll ask them questions, interview them. If we can help them, we will. Um, but sometimes, what they have as a value is the market value. That's really what we're commenting on. There's no caps or anything involved. So, and then they base their formula off that. But I would, and listen. You don't have to do it with me, but if you really think the value is there, I mean, what are you really fighting? But I would double check your public records, make sure what they're using as information is accurate, because that could affect your tax bill.
Well, Bob, I appreciate that. That was some really good insight right at the end there, especially around the just giving us a little bit of a perspective and view inside of how some of these tax appraisers or assessors actually go through this process. I really appreciate you locking in for the first time. Thank you for joining
Yeah,
us. And again,
thank you.
congratulations on all the success that you've had with Triangle Appraisal Group. No doubt, I'm sure that you will continue to experience great success, doing things the way that you do them. And to my audience, I always want to thank you for locking in as well. Make sure you stay tuned to WTOB because every Sunday morning, that's where you can lock in with me. But if you happen to miss me there, I know you're subscribed to the podcast, so you can get that on Spotify and Apple. Wherever you like to get your favorite podcast, you can always lock in there. And until next time, y'all stay locked in.